Hello and welcome to today's event, Future-Proofing Infrastructure, Leveraging AI and Analytics for Competitive Advantage, presented by BDO. My name is Adam Straker, Director of Sponsorship and Member Services here at Canadian Council for Public-Private Partnerships. It's my pleasure to introduce our session and speakers. Today's webinar is an inaugural event in our new Infrastructure Innovators series. These free events welcome all stakeholders from the infrastructure sector and beyond to learn about new opportunities, innovations, ideas and technologies that have the potential to transform the infrastructure sector. Where the rubber hits the road with these events is that they are presented by the innovators and the game changers themselves, all of whom will be ready to answer your questions and available to discuss in more detail. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to draw your attention to our Q&A and polling field. Now, if you look to the right of your screen, you'll see a vertical line of icons. At the top is the messaging icon. It's a little speech bubble you'll see there. Please feel free to say hello to your fellow attendees. Beneath the messaging icon is a little box with a question mark. At the end of the presentation, there will be time for questions, so please pop questions for our speakers in here or vote for existing questions that you would like to see answered. Beneath the Q&A icon is our polling feature. This looks a bit like a bar graph. Now, if you click on here, you'll see our polling questions. Please feel free to answer them during the presentation. Now, cutting-edge technologies are revolutionizing infrastructure management by enhancing efficiency, reducing costs, and providing early adopters with a competitive advantage. Here to tell us more about the future of infrastructure and the technologies and use cases involved are our speakers for today, Roshan David and Bill Syrros. Roshan David is a partner and leader of BDO's applied analytics practice, guiding a team of data scientists, analysts, and developers in transforming organizations with analytics and automation. With more than 15 years' experience, he specializes in helping infrastructure clients across project planning, procurement, construction, and operations, leveraging data-driven solutions to enhance efficiency and uncover opportunities. Roshan also works with private equity and real estate sectors, optimizing deal-making and strategic initiatives. He holds an MBA from the Rotman School of Management and a Bachelor of Engineering from the National Institute of Technology. Let me just see if I can bring Roshan onto this stage. There we go, Roshan. And Bill Syrros leads BDO's Exponential Labs and has more than 20 years' experience in technology services and business. As a key member of BDO's senior leadership team, Bill has driven innovation in data development, IoT, and cloud technologies. He founded Lixar IT, a company known for developing cutting-edge tech solutions to the airline, automotive, and telecommunications sectors. In 2020, Lixar merged with BDO Canada to form BDO Lixar, further solidifying their leadership. Bill is also a dedicated philanthropist committed to community impact. His visionary leadership continues to shape the future of technology and business. Bill, we will bring you to the stage as well. And gentlemen, I will hand over to you.
Good afternoon. All right. Thank you for attending, everyone. I just for a bit of perspective, because I don't think it really came out in the bio. When BDO did acquire Lixar, we had about 250 people, and it was we were definitely by that time an AI first company and a data first company. So we made the pivot into artificial intelligence probably in around 2014, and at that time it was awfully expensive to do AI. You needed expensive infrastructure to do it. You needed expensive people, people like data scientists and senior data architects and machine learning experts and machine vision experts. You needed really capable people, and the demand for these types of people were very, very high. So it was hard to find good people to do that kind of work. Nonetheless, the journey of AI began, decades ago. And as we started, I know we could talk about generative AI a lot right now, but as we started this journey of AI, we were using natural language processing. We were using machine vision. We were using machine learning. We were using it in infrastructure and industry around logistics and planning, and things like self-driving vehicles, robotics, you name it, material science, The difference between where we were then and where we are now is that we're in the generative AI age, which is sort of like the humble beginnings of the intelligence age. And when we all received just almost 2 years ago the keys to OpenAI's ChatGPT, it opened up a very different world of AI. And today I really want to sort of give sort of the higher end understanding of what that means, not describing what it is, actually want to focus on what it means. So Roshan obviously has joined me in this journey. We work together in all things AI. And so Roshan, if you can move to our first slide. I want to talk about where, my role in BDO is really, it's partly chief artificial intelligence officer, part chief evangelist officer for AI. It's everything around the adoption of AI within our organization and for our clients. So what's really important to understand is that it's not just about AI right now. We are living in what's called the exponential age, and I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with what that means. What it essentially means is that there's a number of major technology changes and advances that are all happening at the same time, which is essentially speeding up the rate of technology and change and innovation to a point for which it is exponential. So we're used to a linear growth curve, which is really very horizontal versus vertical in nature. And when we think about the state that we're in today from a pure growth perspective, we are in exponential change dynamics. That means that compute, energy, Web3, manufacturing, biotech, just these things alone are growing at a massive exponential rate, and they're growing together at the same time. So it's hard for the average person to sort of keep up. So then when you throw something like generative AI into the equation, um, it, it, it is essentially providing rocket fuel for all of these key areas of growth. And I'm sure all of you are hearing about these types of things in the news and the media. We're obviously seeing rapid expansion of renewable energy and energy development and energy and power resource access and change there. Computing, we're obviously seeing quantum and artificial intelligence being used at a level that we've never seen before. We have IoT devices in all our infrastructure builds providing a crazy amount of data, obviously connected with a 5G connection. On the biotech side, we're tackling things like diseases that have existed for a long time. How can AI and machine learning and quantum computing and all artificial intelligence all come together to help solve some of our leading edge biotech issues? And you'll see there with genome sequencing and RNA and personalized care, all of this stuff is changing dramatically. On the manufacturing side, especially as it relates to infrastructure, we're seeing the growth of 3D printing and how that applies to building infrastructure in general. There's just a bunch of change that's going on there, and the material science work that's being put into the actual ingredients that fuel a lot of that infrastructure change and the builds that are going that are the newer builds that are taking place. And then finally, on the Web3 side, anything from cryptography, which I'm sure that the world isn't ready for it yet, but everybody's talking about it. Bitcoin continues to do what it's doing, and say what you will about it, that industry continues to grow and find applications in real world. So I just wanted to set the backdrop before we go deeper into AI and how AI is going to provide that advantage. But as far as, when we look at the infrastructure industry is concerned, you see different applications of technology, those exponential change agents taking place. And you've all heard them before, things like digital twins and AR, VR, and XR. The renewable energy piece is an important one. The implications of adding robotics to large infrastructure scenarios, drones, manufacturing, you name it. This is all part of the exponential change mix. But I want to move towards the AI piece because I think it's really, really important for us to talk about where we are in that generative AI phase. So, how familiar is everybody with generative AI? I think we have a poll that's available for people to provide their answer. Roshan, that's the case, right? There you go.
Yeah.
So, if we flip to the next slide, Roshan.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if somewhere the poll. Yeah, I think there's a poll. Yeah, and I think we'll just wait for everyone
Oh, there you
to.
go. All right,
Yeah,
I see it now. I
yeah,
wasn't sure whether we're going to get the instant results.
yeah. And I think if we give everyone maybe another 10 seconds or so,
Okay.
I mean, at this point, I'm sure everyone's heard of Gen AI, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're moving from a phase now where it's less about telling you what the basics are, what generative AI is, and what structured data is, and what unstructured data is. It's actually really not about that. It's more about what is it in terms of how does it apply to us? So I'm just seeing the votes come in, and as people continue to vote, let's just move on in terms of our slide, Roshan. So, um, a little under 2 years ago, and I sort of see this as a 5-year journey. And this is my opinion only, but you have to understand, I am in this world 24/7. This is what I study. This is what I learn. This is what I play with in terms of my 100% attention span. These are the tools that are available to us as far as generative AI applications that are available to all of you. There are the free versions and there are paid versions. And I use pretty much all of these. OpenAI is the most popular one, which is called ChatGPT. They've just recently released their latest version, which we'll get into in a moment. Microsoft's version of generative AI is called Copilot. So for many of you, you would and potentially have access to this because your infrastructure supports Microsoft 365. And it's something that has started becoming integrated into all of Microsoft's platform. Other key ones there are Llama 3, which is a Meta and Facebook related Gen AI engine. Claude 3, which is related to Amazon. And then finally, there's something called Perplexity. And Perplexity is sort of like a Google on top of OpenAI, large language models. And so what these models are, and I really, really want to simplify them for people. Forget about the fact that you interact with them online. They're literally text boxes that you can talk to, and it can respond to you in very human-like responses. But think of it as if you had the ability to hire an assistant. Everyone, imagine everyone in your company had the ability to hire an assistant, and that assistant came with an IQ of 120. 120 is more than the average. The average IQ of the human being today is 100. So the latest version of generative AI in terms of ChatGPT is operating at 120. And so that why that is significant is that for $30 a month, you're essentially adding a helper or an assistant that is augmenting your intelligence, because we are moving into the intelligence age. And I know everybody's saying, well, what can it do for me? Is this overhyped technology? Is this technology helping in our overall productivity? Well, if you said you didn't want an assistant with that level of IQ to be able to assist and support you right across the board in any job you had, then I think you weren't being honest. And so that's the situation that we find ourselves in with generative AI. We are at a point where, it's fine for you to move on there, Roshan. We're at a point where I call it level 2, where we're starting to see generative AI provide that level of logic and reasoning assistance to us. It's starting to solve problems with us, right? So no longer is it just giving us responses, but it's starting to work through problem solving the way a human would. So, so in context, when we're talking about Canada, Canada right now has a productivity issue, and it has for the last 20 years. We have crawled along in terms of productivity at about 0.05% per year. And if we were able to get everybody using generative AI, everybody in everybody's roles, we could potentially see a 6% increase right across the board. We can increase from 0.5 to 6% almost immediately if we started using AI as an assistant, as a personal assistant. So in terms of countries adopting generative AI, we're not even in the top 30. So you're wondering why I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this because you're often hearing that Canada has a productivity issue, but we also have a productivity issue because we don't like to adopt technology as fast as our competitive countries. So if I was to say to you that in the US, they're adopting it at double the speed that we are adopting at, and they are also investing at double the amount that we are. That shouldn't be a surprise, but if it is, it is. But that's actually the case today. So, and so then you ask yourself, why are they ahead of us? We see a lot of the rapid advances in terms of all these centralized generative AI engines, all being from the United States. We had a chance in Canada to do it because guess what? We have 3 of the 5 gods of AI in this country. The actual people who are the leading thinkers in generative AI are actually from Canada. We also have the best research institutes. So, so I wanted, it's important for people to know that, because for those thinking that this whole generative AI movement is a bit of, in a bit of a hype pattern, it is in terms of hype, like as in people were excited about it, now potentially are moving into the trough of disillusionment, which is what typically happens when some new technology, some new disruptive technology comes out. You enjoy that year and a half of hype, and then it goes into disillusionment where companies sort of say, well, I didn't really see the value right away, so I'm going to kind of put it in a holding pattern and I'll get back to it when it starts revving up again. My advice to all of you is that this isn't hype. This is real, what's happening around us. The intelligence age is upon us, and generative AI is here to stay, and it'll only get more powerful. And so companies need to be super competitive right now, and to use generative AI to their advantage. And so you're all asking yourself, well, how do I use it? The answer is, it's a real cop-out if people in your company are saying, I don't see us gaining any value by using this technology. And I say that simply because most organizations haven't done the work. There's hard work involved here. We essentially have to get down to the level of analyzing almost every role that we have in our organization. And in terms of infrastructure or any organization in any kind of industry, we have analysts, we have project managers, we have C-level people, we have HR leaders, we have marketing leaders, we have all of the companies we work with have these types of people. Every single one of these positions augmented by AI can become better. We can become better at marketing. We can become better at HR. We can become better analysts, better project managers, better predictors of spend and cost and all those key things, better finance people. All of that can happen if we are using this technology. And so right now we're at level 2, which is, like I said, that human level problem solving stage. We are quickly starting to see agentic AI, which is level 3, which is developing agents. And what I said earlier was, imagine if you can have an assistant that cost you $30 a month that was smarter than you, that can drive a lot of the workloads that you're currently doing. These agents are going to be able to talk to many databases. They're going to be able to talk to many products. So we're going to start literally connecting the dots to different products and applications in our jobs and in our infrastructure. And so when we get to that point, we are starting to see really what is the future of work. And I know a lot of people ask themselves, are people going to lose their jobs, or what impact is it going to have on humans? For the next number of years, most of it's going to be a scenario where, and I'm sure you've all heard this line, anyone working with AI will flourish in their roles. Anyone deciding to opt out and not use AI and not use these generative AI tools are actually going to be left behind. They're the ones that are going to be vulnerable. And it's important to understand that. I personally am addicted to it. And that doesn't make me strange, because all of you at one point in time said you could never become addicted to the internet. And yet the internet became an addiction for all of us, whether it was online gaming or e-commerce or shopping or whatever, right? We became addicted to it. And then we all have phones in our pockets we carry every single day. And imagine if we had all our phones taken away from us today. Where would we be? How would we organize our lives? And for some, I'm sure you're probably saying, man, wouldn't that be a great world if we didn't have the internet or phones? But that's different. That's a whole other conversation. So philosophical one for sure. But I see generative AI as being as addictive as those other technologies. And we have to sort of shape our minds to think that way. That's what's going to have the impact on us. So at BDO, we've got 6,000 people. 6,000 people are being asked to use Copilot, augmenting their roles. It's not easy. We're not the best at it. We have the same adoption issues as anyone else. But it's something that, from a leadership perspective, we definitely have to push from the top and make sure that we become addicted to AI so that we can be at an advantage from a competitive perspective. And I know this is all about leveraging AI and analytics for our competitive advantage. Not using AI makes you not competitive. And I can't really say it any clearer than that. It's an absolute necessity. If I was to take our early adopters at BDO and say, we're going to take generative AI away from you, they would probably think about working somewhere else. They would likely leave because they've adapted to this augmented intelligence now that helps them do their job better, that helps them produce better quality, that helps them produce more, makes them more productive and more efficient. So we're going to get to this point now where I don't know if I really like this slide, because I think this is kind of perpetuates the human movement towards machine movement. But I think that 100% of the work done by AI is not really a good thing to say, simply because what's really going to happen is that AI is going to actually handle transactional processes. And for the last 30 years, we all have worked, no matter what industry, in creating transactional processes. And those transactional processes are the ones that have an AI target. The ones where we are going to go as humans is we're going to become better in shaping our expertise and our understanding. We will develop expertise, more expertise. We're going to develop better relationships. And so we'll have more time to create those relationships, which is super important to increasing our productivity overall. So with that said, I want to sort of shift now this conversation to, okay, what does it mean to me in terms of infrastructure? So Roshan, on to you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bill. Yes, I think like as Bill said, right, AI is going to affect each one of us. And the way it impacts like what we do on a day-to-day basis is not going to be uniform, right? So with that being said, the pace of disruption is not going to be uniform across all sectors and all functions. This is obviously a very heavy chart with a lot of details in there, but the key takeaway really is that certain functions such as back office, legal, management, and operations are likely going to be, impacted by AI sooner than the hard skilled trades, right? Such as construction, building and maintenance, the hands-on, on the ground type of work. And the reality is, like, there's a lot of innovation happening on that front as well, with autonomous job sites and other things. So it's once some of that catches up in conjunction with AI, even that space will likely is not too far away from being disrupted, right? So what does this journey really look like for an organization? So as with any new technological innovation, adoption of Gen AI within an organization is a journey. The key factors that tend to impact the pace of adoption within organizations are really qualitative, if you think about it. As Bill highlighted, it really starts with the tone at the top, right? Leadership, support, and vision. Like, if there isn't leadership buy-in, you can have pockets of innovation within the organization, but it isn't going to be easy for some of these innovators to stick around and build the next gen version of the company without buy-in from leadership. So that is an absolute must, and it's one of the areas where we see, like, most organizations, things fall behind because there just isn't leadership buy-in, right? With Once that's in place, the next thing that's really important is having the right governance and technology infrastructure in place, right? So you need to know, how an organization is going to be making AI decisions, that have the right security in place. There have been stories of, people uploading documents on ChatGPT, and then these documents becoming publicly available to everyone, right? So having the right governance structure and the right infrastructure in place is absolutely critical, because without that, you cannot necessarily put these tools and technologies in the hands of your people, right? So once that's out of the place, then you need the right people, and you need to empower your people to make some mistakes along the way, as innovation doesn't necessarily happen. It doesn't necessarily happen without the trial and error model, right? So empowering people to make a few mistakes along the way and giving them the freedom and leverage to do so. So with that, maybe I know it's been a lot of talk, us presenting up until now, so maybe a good checkpoint over here just to do a pulse check. What excites everyone about Gen AI, like the potential of Gen AI in infra sector specifically, right? Depending on what you do on a day-to-day basis, I think what excites you is likely going to be different. So I'd be curious to see, where each one of you are starting to see some of these applications of AI within your organization.
And that's a poll on the right
Yeah,
side. So you pick the poll, you'll be able to see.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to recognize as you're answering your poll questions is that automation is one of the things that you hear about a lot as it relates to AI. And so, 20 years ago, you used to do robotic process automation, which is RPA, which is really getting rid of swivel chair techniques or administrative data entry type roles. What makes this different in terms of using generative AI is that we can create generative AI can analyze tons and tons and tons of data in fractions of seconds versus humans being able to analyze that data. And that's really, really important. So, an AI can manage and project manage. It can look at spreadsheets. It can look at databases. It could look at PDFs. It could look at Excel spreadsheets. You name it. We could point generative AI at any of your documentation. And essentially, what I said earlier about having like a free human assistant, pretend that human assistant memorized all your documentation so you didn't have to, and you had an interface to all that memory. That is sort of the new version of robotic process automation. That is new automation. That is you having access to entire libraries and dictionaries and whatever it is that you need to make yourself smarter so that you're more qualified and you're more prepared to be who you are as a professional. And I think a lot of people don't sort of see that yet. They don't see how they can augment their intelligence by using generative AI and the power of that information.
Yeah. Yeah, well said, Bill. And I can see the poll results come in, and it's quite evenly spread out, right? Depending on what you do, the reality is there are applications of AI across each of these, specialties, right? And I'll touch on some of those specific use cases over the next segment of the presentation. But before we do that, I think let's be honest here, right? The construction sector has historically been very, very slow to adopt new technologies. And, you know, having said that, there are a lot of pressures facing the industry right now, such as labor shortages, rising costs of materials, the companies not necessarily being able to meet construction demands, right? And some of these pressures are pushing construction companies to start looking at AI and other technologies more actively, right? So large companies have already, embarked on this journey and are beginning to apply AI across, their life cycle in order to improve efficiency. And it is expected that over the next 5 to 6 years, there's going to be a spend of about $8 billion into AI and other modern technologies to really modernize the sector as a whole, right? So it's an inflection point in the industry, and you're going to start seeing some of that, impact yourself on a day-to-day basis as well. The typical enterprise journey that we see, how organizations end up adopting AI, it tends to be a three-step process, really, right? And step one is empowering people to use AI. So this is really putting AI in the hands of the people and letting them play with it. And as Bill said, you use them as an assistant, right? In their day-to-day to maybe like do a better do their jobs in an augmented way. And the reality is, right, a lot of these ideas and innovations are even identifying business cases where like AI can really help or transform an organization comes from all levels, right? So putting it in the hands of people and giving them some time to play with it is a critical first step before you can even identify some of these specific use cases that can then give you a competitive advantage, right? So that's really step two. Is once you have a few specific use cases, then AI is specifically applied towards the enablement of these use cases. And this is, as Bill called it, like the agents, right? So you're building AI agents and AI solutions that are then doing a part of the job, which is very transactional in nature. And the last step really is like reimagining the organization as a whole, right? Identifying workflows and even like workforce areas that are completely augmented now through the use of AI. And I can maybe give you an example of a popular company that actually went through this process. Netflix, right? Back in the days, they started as a DVD rental company, and in the dawn of AI, with the dawn of the internet, they started testing like the streaming side of things. And with streaming, what they had access to was a whole bunch of information. What you and I watch, what are some of the things that people like to see, and they built a recommender engine based on that viewership metrics, and they started pushing content down to people. So the business model now shifted from an individual walking into a store to pick one or two DVDs to now the company pushing a whole bunch of content onto its viewers, right? And let's be honest, I end up watching a whole bunch more content now because of this model, as opposed to a scenario where I had to walk into a store and pick a couple of DVDs, right? Another one in the infrastructure industry is Komatsu. They have over the last few years transitioned themselves from an equipment rental business to an end-to-end smart construction solution provider, and this has significantly modernized the way they've been doing business and has driven significant growth for them over the last couple of years as well. So this next section, I'm going to jump into some of these specific industry use cases to bring all of the content that we've covered so far to life a little bit. So the first one, as I discussed, is the individual empowerment bucket, right? And this is really, it could be ChatGPT, it could be the Microsoft Copilots at BDO over here. As Bill mentioned, we've rolled out Microsoft Copilots to all our staff over here, and we're starting to see benefits, right? It's still new. Microsoft has only had this out for maybe a year or so now, right? But some of the early metrics coming through them is that they're seeing upwards of like 30 to 40% of productivity gains, right? So what that really means is what would have taken maybe 3 individuals to do in the past is now, likely going to be done by 2 individuals, right? And this is only going to increase, or like this exponential productivity gain is only going to keep increasing. And I can give you a couple of examples in like ways, this has helped me on a day-to-day basis, right? In the past, when we walk into meetings, we always take, a junior resource to just listen in and take notes, right? With Teams and Copilot turned on, you don't need that anymore. It's transcribing meeting minutes. At the end of the meeting, you can ask Teams, can you summarize like next steps and action items? And it's 90% good to go, right? You just make a couple of edits and push it out. The same thing with ChatGPT and other AI assistants. You can now do a lot of research and leverage it, to augment the way you've been doing things. And people who actually unlocked or untapped the right way of using some of these assistants are really starting to see some of that incremental productivity gains, right?
Yeah. So let me just cut in just for a second, Roshan.
Yeah.
A lot of people are probably asking themselves, well, where do I find this stuff? How do I find which one should I use? So, it's kind of like a free market out there, right? So ChatGPT is available. Copilot through Microsoft Suite is available. You're probably asking yourself, well, who do I gotta ask for to get this, or how do I learn how to use this kind of thing? The education for all of this is pretty much free, right? It exists on things like YouTube. You don't even have to pay for YouTube. It's free. Like the actual instructional tutorials, people just walking through using the technology, showing you how to use it, showing you the prompts to use, showing you how to transcribe the meetings, how to summarize and write emails, how to quickly create drafts. All those things are literally free to watch and free to learn. All it takes is time. And I can tell from personal experience, I learn something new every day that ultimately blows my mind because it's reduced time for me. All of us have always wanted to take time back. Every time we get introduced to new technology, it almost seems like a time suck. This is the first time ever in the history of technology where it's actually giving you time back. And if you create that mindset, and that ability to be curious and to want to learn, you're definitely going to take that next step on this journey of being in the intelligence age.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been a significant time saver for myself, right? And so that's the 101. And the next natural step of evolution is starting to build some of those agents or specific AIs to address use cases within the industry, right? And the reality is that there's a ton of use cases across the infrastructure life cycle, all the way from, like, let's say you're a fund manager. There are ways to now use AI in your diligence and target screening process, all the way to like managing your funds and testing scenarios. On the project side of things, there are ways to optimize resource allocation, building more, leveraging AI to like stress test or like test a bunch of different scenarios. On the procurement side, I know Metrolinx had used a very complex like, predictive model as a part of their Go expansion procurement process, where the proponents had to submit time schedules for the train, and this was run through the model to figure out what kind of economic benefit the city of Toronto would get based on those schedules, right? So this is another example of how some of these tools are being used on a day-to-day basis across different facets of the infrastructure lifecycle. On the construction asset management operations side, there are a ton of applications again, multimodal modes of capturing project status updates to continuous monitoring of projects in a near real-time manner, predictive equipment, and equipment maintenance and predictive resource modeling. So a lot of stuff happening in that space as well. And I'll dive into some of these specific examples over the next couple of slides. So on the asset management or performance side of things, just imagine, right? Like you're a fund manager, you manage 20 to 30 assets, or you're overseeing 20 to 30 projects. And being able to have a near real-time view of the status of these projects or performance of these assets is table stakes, really, right? And we've noticed like a lot of companies don't have access to that. And once you have all of this information centralized and collated in a central manner, you can then start adding AI on top of this. You can start asking questions. Hey, how was my performance last month? And AI is going to give you a natural language response saying, oh, you know what, it was up by 5% and asset 5, drove most of that increase. And then you can ask the next question, okay, what about asset 5? Like, why did it do so well? And what can we do at other assets to improve their performance, right? So now you're having a more natural discussion with AI once all that information is in place. And you may not necessarily get a 100% response, but if you get a starting get a response that 50% there, it's still giving you a lot that you historically never had access to.
And just to add to that, Roshan,
Yeah.
you just showed a complex interface, and I'm sure everybody on this call saying, "Oh, look at another interface with circles and colors and drop downs and all that other stuff." What I said earlier about having an assistant that can help you manage the information flow and understand the information flow and get you the information you're looking for, we can technically put an AI agent on top of this entire system that you see in front of you,
Yeah.
and it will act as the human interface for you to just ask simple questions to without having to log in, do all the drop downs, learn what the analysis tools are, learn what they mean, all that other stuff. You're just asking a simple question and looking for a simple response. That is what AI is going to do on top of all systems.
Yeah.
And it could be in the form of chatbot, but I call it an agent simply because I think that, I think that you have to sort of treat it as a human that understands the system better than we do.
Yeah. And just think through, like, within every organization, how many people spend a significant chunk of their time building out monthly reports, quarterly reports, or asset level reports. And a lot of that can be automated once something like this is in place. And you just have people reviewing and providing the judgment or the subject matter expertise and the commentary on top of the data, and let AI do the bulk of the heavy lifting, right? Now, similarly, if you are, let's say, a construction company or an engineering company, and you're in the business of doing projects, just taking a step back and, let's say, looking through all your historical projects, or like 1,000 historical projects, to get a better sense of, what kind of projects are driving profitability, like what kind of projects have went well, or like what are some of the areas that we can do things differently to improve our performance, right? And you start uncovering themes such as certain PMs or estimators always drive higher profitability. Certain types of projects, maybe, like, you're really good at building bridges, but when you build schools, it's not necessarily as profitable. Or maybe a certain size of project is not necessarily a sweet spot, right? So again, leveraging some of that more predictive side of analytics and AI to review a whole bunch of information and provide recommendations can really equip you with a lot of information, which then you can use to either right size the business, or reconfigure the business, or even when you're pricing work in the future, right? You know exactly which ones to go after, which ones to chase, and what kind of like pricing model you should be using. Something very similar, even from an actuals to budget tracking, can be extremely valuable. We see so many scenarios where a lot of these projects go sideways, and they hit us on the other side, where we're then addressing claims, right? And the reality is, a lot of that could have been avoided in a proactive manner if someone was essentially tracking things in a real-time manner, in a very, very close manner, and stepped in at the right time to address some of those deficiencies, and prevented things from going sideways. So something as simple as just being able to track things in a near real-time manner can have a significant impact as well. AI is great in its current form. It's great with words, text, language, right? That's why it's called the large language model right now. And the entire infrastructure space is extremely document intensive. So being able to leverage AI, let's say, on top of a whole bunch of contracts, or whole bunch of, let's say, project artifacts, and interacting with it in a near real-time manner, like we're seeing a lot of companies starting to do this. You can ask, okay, what are some of the TNCs for contract X with customer B, right? And it would pull up the document, point you towards the exact source of some of this information, and then save you a whole bunch of time, as opposed to having to go through all of these files manually and figure things out, right? And likewise, if there are a whole bunch of like project artifacts that you need to be creating at every stage of the project, you can get an 80% starter pack created by AI, and you can go in and augment it as needed, right? So there's a lot that can be done from a document creation and content search perspective as well. And these are some of the high probability of success use cases of AI that we're seeing, from last year, right? Similarly, there are a ton of organizations and startups right now, that are getting this development when it comes to being able to track or connect what's going on the job site with the back office, right? So historically, you have like a project manager going on site, like review things, come back, create a status update, share it with like a whole bunch of stakeholders. Now with like the multimodal information gathering capabilities, there are
Sorry,
companies.
Roshan, maybe
Yeah.
mute the video. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are companies out there where you can start taking, which allow you to take pictures of the job site. There are companies which have robots walking through the job sites, taking pictures, drones capturing pictures. So that way, your back office has access to information at the same time as as it's in a near real time manner, and some of the decisions are being made on the spot as opposed to in a reactive manner, right? Similarly, another area of AI is computer vision, right? So job sites are now being equipped with cameras or drones that are tracking, resource utilization or where people are located within sites, and some of the applications of being able to track things at this level of detail is from a risk perspective. You're ensuring that people are wearing all the right equipment. You're looking at
Roshan?
you're looking at resource utilization, equipment utilization on the job sites in a near real-time manner as well. And again, just sitting behind a computer, you can now ensure that the right people are on the ground getting the job done, and they're following all the right protocols, and you can monitor things in a near real-time manner, right? So these are again just some of the many applications of AI and technology in the construction industry, and it's all just at a very very early stage, right? The reality is we're probably at a point similar to when with the dawn of the internet back in the 90s, right? The next few years with AI starting to become more and more intelligent and being able to do more is really going to change the way a lot of us work, as well as the way a lot of our organizations do things, right? And the reality is like some organizations obviously hop onto the internet bandwagon and do things differently, whereas others stick around and just ignore whatever's going on around them, and that's going to create a very different set of organizations 10 years down the line. And I think at this point we all have a choice as to like which path we want to go down. Yeah, and pursue, right? So with that, maybe Bill, I'll just pass it over to you for some closing thoughts.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm going to simplify. I'm going to simplify all of this here because I know we have some questions. You really have to just adopt. You have to make that decision as an individual or as an organization to adopt the technology. And I know that we showed examples and we showed images of things. At the end of the day, AI can consume all of that information and serve it up in a very human interface and a human response. And so we are at an inflection point. It's not going to go away, and I know there are concerns. I saw a question in here that I just wanted to get to. What's the current state of the black box problem of AI? Well, if that's how understanding how you get to an answer. Well, when we first started using generative AI, they didn't include sources, right? Now sources are available. If you're using Perplexity, it's going to list every single source. If you're using generative AI, as in, ChatGPT, any version of it now, you could simply ask for the sources for which it gets information from. I know people are concerned about hallucinations or something. So, where it just made something up. I'm worried less about hallucinations when it's looking at my data. I know it's looking at my data. Therefore, I can cross-reference whether or not it actually pulled the numbers out of my data, right? The hallucinations that might be more concerning is when you're asking really general questions that have no sources for which it pulled answers from. So I really worry a lot less because, I mean, humans aren't impervious to making mistakes. Um, uh, neither is generative AI. However, it is functioning at a very high level of IQ, and we have to recognize that. If we just ignore it, then we're not really seeing reality. So, were there another question here? My key concern is convergence of risks across various infrastructure categories and how AI can prioritize improvements in our critical infrastructure risk posture. Yeah, I mean, this is an analysis. This analysis scenario. What I say to our organization, especially around risk, is we could spend hours or days or months or years trying to create data lakes and get our data clean and structure our data. All I really care about is freeing data up so that we can understand where the low-hanging fruit is, so that we can start providing analysis and solutions on top of data right from day one, as opposed to waiting a couple years to do it. And the better we understand our data, the less risk we have in terms of not knowing what we have and not knowing if a project is being delivered on time, and not knowing if we have supply chain concerns, etc. So I don't see any other questions here. So perhaps, yeah, we can sort of wrap this up. So sorry, go ahead. You're on mute, sir. There you go.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both, Bill and Roshan, for that really fantastic presentation. And also thank you to whoever did your PowerPoint deck. That is a real thing of beauty. So thank you. Now, for our audience members, if anyone has questions about today's presentation, please feel free to reach out to Bill and Roshan directly via email. You should be able to see their email addresses here on the slide that you can just see demonstrated there. Alternatively, if you would like prefer an easy email introduction to Bill and Roshan, we can do that too. Simply click on the link that's about to appear in the chat, pop your email address in the field and click submit. And I want to do a nice warm introduction for you to Bill and Roshan for further discussion. I would also like to say here that BDO will be sharing a follow-up content on this topic very soon. To stay informed, simply scan the QR code that's on your screen and subscribe. Easy peasy. So, Bill and Roshan, I will pop you over to the wing. Thank you very much for your time and expertise today. So the Council's world-famous annual conference is happening on November 4th and 5th at the Sheraton Centre in downtown Toronto. Join up to 1,000 decision makers and experts from across North America and around the globe for the only conference that brings together all facets of Canada's infrastructure industry together at one time to discuss delivering Canada's broader infrastructure needs. Tickets are available. Register now at the link in the chat. And then on November 13th, we will be back here for our second ever Infrastructure Innovators webinar, How AI and Internet of Things is Reinventing Operational P3s. It will be presented by Samantha Fuller, Managing Director for APAC and North America, and Kelly Widger, Canada General Manager, both of Service Works Global. This free webinar will be accompanied by a white paper of the same name that promises to share many fascinating insights on this important topic. And you may register at this link. And if you would like to know more about these events, the Council, or our Infrastructure Innovators program, let's connect. Please reach out to me at this email address also shared in the chat. And now that really is it for today. Thank you again to Bill and to Roshan and to the team at BDO for this fantastic event. And thanks also to you, our audience, for joining us. For now, that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.